Look there.
It's time to say goodbye for now. We'll have our second time around. Before you go, there's something I'd like to say.
Cut it. Yeah. Take your time.
And you're gonna be sorry someday.
I'm just passing through, trying to do the best I can. I'm just holding on.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport. The thrill of victory.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars above in your eyes. A fantabulous night to make romance neath the cover of October sky. Oh, the leaves on the trees are falling to the sound of the breezes that blow.
Every day I have the blues.
Hello, and welcome to the Strothers tape. I'm Jerry Strothers, son of Gerald O. Strothers Jr. Actually, Gerald O. Strothers Jr. is my name. My father's name is Gerald O. Strothers Sr. And what I have put together, along with a lot of help from my family, the Strother and Strothers names is a trip back in the past of the Strothers. I started this tape off with a visit to my Aunt Florence on the Deary Street address, and here's how that visit went. One. Okay.
This is a brief history of my family. I'm Florence Elizabeth Strothers. I married Albert Alston when did I get married? April the 10th, 1943 in Washington, D.C. And from this union was one son, Jeffrey Cromwell Alston. Jeffrey Cromwell Alston married Charmaine Philippa Lewis, and from that union were 4 children. My parents were Stuart Leonard Strothers and Mary Ethel Graves. Stuart Leonard Strothers' father was William Strothers, who was born 6/8/1871 in Twyman's Mills, Virginia, Madison County. He joined Siloam Baptist Church in Pittsburgh. He was baptized at Carone Baptist Church, later baptized at Carone Baptist Church. Let me see. My father's mother was Patience Brown. My grandfather's parents were George Strothers and Cecilia Bell, and my grandmother's parents were, I don't know her first name, her last name was Brown. Her father's last name was Brown. Her mother's name was Rosanna, and she was a slave. My mother's father was Orrin Graves, and my mother's mother was Florence Allen Harrison. My father's grandfather was George Strothers, and he married Cecilia Bell. And my paternal grandmother was Brown, and her father was last name Brown. His first name was I don't know it, and her mother was Rosanna Slave. My great-grandfather George Strothers' parents were Fielding Strothers and Margaret Kuntz, and my great-grandmother Cecilia Bell's parents were Willis Bell and Julia, I don't know her last name. My maternal great-grandparents' parents were unknown. My mother's father was Orrin Graves, Jr., and he married my grandmother, Florence Allen Harrison. My maternal great-grandfather was Orrin Graves, Sr., and my great-grandmother was Sarah, last name unknown. And my grandmother's parents were Logan Harrison and Patsy Hunley, and her grandparents were, first name unknown, Coleman, a white man, and a mulatto daughter of an unknown white woman. And my grandmother's mother was Patsy Hunley, and Patsy Hunley's parents were, her father was unknown and to me, and her mother was Easter Bowman Ann Hunley, because she had 2 masters. Patsy Hunley married Logan Harrison, and from this union were 13 children. Florence Graves, Florence who married Orrin Graves, Annie who married Tom Faust, Will never married, Nat, Ed, Sandy married Lucy, Mary died at 9 of 9-day fever, Irving, Waverly, twins Philip and James, George and Johnny. Orrin Graves Jr. married Florence Allen Harrison, and from that union were 6 children. Marion Butler Graves married Gertrude Dugan. The twins, Julie and Adie, lived one day. Benny Roosevelt Graves married Luther Beasley. Mary Ethel married Stuart Leonard Strothers. Patsy Anna married Andrew William Thompson. And her second husband was Clifton Moore. And the seventh child died. Stuart Leonard Strothers, my father, married Mary Ethel Graves, and from this union were 4 children. Florence Elizabeth Strothers married Albert Alston. William Leonard Strothers married Betty Yvonne Reed. Stuart Washington Strothers married Doris May Fisher. And Gerald Orlando Strothers married Beatrice Page Allen, and his second wife was Anne Russell Crane. Florence Elizabeth Strothers married Albert Alston. From this union was one child, Jeffrey Cromwell Alston, who married Charmaine Philippa Lewis. And from this union were 4 children, Jeffrey Cromwell Alston Jr., Orrin Patrick Alston, who married Donna Marie Johnson, and Christopher Philip Alston, who married Crystal Ann Rouse, and a daughter was stillborn. William Leonard Strothers married Betty Yvonne Reed, and from this union were 3 children, William Jr., Alan Reed, and Cheryl. Oh, what's Cheryl? Cheryl Yvonne, I think Cheryl's name is. Check on that. Stuart Washington Strothers married Doris May Fisher, and from this union were 2 children, Stuart Jr. and Joyce Claudia. Gerald Orlando Strothers married Beatrice Page Allen. From this union were 3 sons and 1 daughter, stillborn. The sons were Gerald Jr., Keith, and Byron. And his second wife was Anne Russell Crane, no children. Now, Warren Graves Sr. married Sarah, last name unknown, and their children were Orrin Jr., who married Florence Allen Harrison in Reedsville, North Carolina. Ben married Ella Henderson. He had 1 daughter out of wedlock, whose name was Fanny Palmer. Billy married Sally Elliott, no children. Walter married, I don't know. They had no children. Nora married Jim Hartnett Sr. and they had 1 child. They had 2 children, Jim Jr. and Sarah. And then there were twins. I don't know the names. Then Pinckney married Lula, and Green was a son born out of wedlock. I don't know anything else about them. And Pinckney married Lula, and they had 3, 4. They had Pinky Jr., who was single. He had 1 son out of wedlock, whose name was Wesley Seibert. Ruth married William Mullen, no children. Dunbar married twice. Her first husband's last name was Pettis. She had 2 daughters, Carolyn and Connie. And she married the second time Arthur White, and she had 2 sons, Arthur Jr. and Craig. Helen married George Gatlin, and they divorced. James married Catherine Glass. They had 3 children, James Jr., Harriet Elizabeth, called Betty, and Leslie. And Willie married Catherine Hill, and they had children, William Jr., Leroy Walter, Jean, Mabel. And Benny married his first wife, Hilda, had 1 daughter, Joyce, and his second wife was Mercedes, and they had no children. Now, Viney, last name unknown, married first name unknown, Graves, and Viney lived to be 104 years old. They had 4 children. Orrin Sr. married Sarah, and they had 9 children. Gabe married, I don't know. And they had 2 children, Hattie and Gabe Jr. Ples and Madison were the other 4 children of Viney and Graves. Easter Bowman Hunley, I don't know if she ever married. She had 2 masters, that's why her name was Bowman and Hunley. And her children were Patsy, who married Logan Harrison, Elizabeth, called Lizzie, married Cliff Henderson. They had 7 children. And Mary married, first name unknown, Bailey, and they had 1 child. Richard married, name unknown, and John married, name unknown. And then there was a 6th child, but I don't know the name. And that's as far as I've written so far, and I have.
You say, where did the family start off? What state and what place did the family start off?
Virginia and North Carolina. Grandpa was born in Twyman's Mill, Virginia, Madison County, Virginia.
And his name was?
William Strothers. But this is mother. These are mother's parents, and mother's grandma was Providence Church. I don't know. Grandma was from Virginia, I think. Wait, no. Oh, I have to look them out of the book. Because she was married in North Carolina, and she lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, Reedsville.
Well, William Strothers.
William Strothers was born in Twyman's Mills, Virginia, Madison County, Virginia. And I think Patience.
And who were his parents? William Strothers.
George W. Strothers, and Cecilia Bell was his mother. And George Strothers was a farmer and a hack driver and a barber. And when he came to Pittsburgh, he gave each of his sons, William and Fielding, enough money that it started them out on their careers. And when George Strothers came to Pittsburgh, he still drove, they called the hacks, they were cabs like, and the people who had land then were like the black aristocracy in the South, because he had land, and a hack driver, they were like the elites then, and barbers, they were the elites. And George Strothers taught his son Fielding to the barbering trade. And when he first came, they had a store on Luna Street, and that's where the East Liberty Boulevard is now, not too far. It would be just below Frankstown Avenue, about the space of a block. They used to have a store, and then it changed into the barber shop. And then when Uncle Fielding moved from there, he moved where Daddy's shop was on Hamilton. That was Uncle Fielding's shop at first. Then when he retired, then Daddy continued.
Now, take it a step back from William Strothers. Who was back further? Who were his parents?
George W. Strothers, and his tombstone is in Allegheny Cemetery. And I have the block number, and he did have one of those big stones that stood up. But several years ago, vandals went through the cemetery and knocked stones over. So when they knocked the stone over the cemetery, I couldn't find it for a while, but Jeffrey and I found it last year again, because we went to the office. And the cemetery just left the stones down, and they have it laying flat now. And anybody that hadn't been there, the dirt started to go over it. So his stone was still exposed, so we cleaned it off. So you can see his stone in the cemetery, George W. Strothers.
And who were his parents?
Fielding Strothers and Margaret Kuntz. And then Celia Bell's parents were Willis Bell and Julia, her last name.
I'm losing it here. Trace me back to...
These were the first ones.
Those are the first of the... When did the family become Strothers?
When Margaret Kuntz married Fielding Strothers, and then their son was George Strothers. Then George Strothers...
Fielding Strothers was the first Strothers on record?
That I know of. And that's back in the days of slavery. So I don't know any further, because that's as far back as Cousin Australia knew. But the people in Virginia might know more. But see, Cousin Australia would be 100 years old now, I guess, if she were alive. So I don't know how much the people in Virginia know. And when Grandpa died, they just threw all of his papers and books away. Aunt Marie and them, they weren't interested in them. And I was working the day, that his last wife when she died, her son came and they threw papers out in the yard, and all I was able to rescue, I have one book that was Grandpa. I think someone gave it to him in 1871. I have it in there. I have two little books, so I don't even know where his Bible is now. Our cousin Jean has Aunt Marie's papers, and she might have a Bible or something, but I haven't gotten over Jean's house yet to see, because nobody in that family was interested in keeping anything. So Stuart is digging on that end.
This is George Strothers.
William Strothers.
The first Strothers.
No, Fielding. That's all I know. Now, Fielding and Mark.
Fielding was the first Strothers,
Strothers.
that we have record of.
Yes, and that was my grandfather's grandfather. Because, see, my grandfather's brother was Fielding also.
Oh, okay. So, what you have something from Fielding Strothers?
Not
Here.
this Fielding, but from Grandpa's brother. I know anecdotes, stories that Cousin Australia told about him because they were first cousins.
Now, what about you said you had books on one of the Strothers? Some books.
The notebook that I originally did, I started transferring it to this because I wrote it in pencil and it's beginning to fade. I have that upstairs.
No, I meant you mentioned that there were the only thing we had left from the first Strothers were some books, pictures, or anything.
That was Grandpa I was talking about.
So this Strothers is from which?
He's the first.
And he's from?
This would be in the days of slavery.
And which? This is Virginia, or where?
I imagine Virginia, because that's where Grandpa was born in Virginia. So that's where the Strothers were, in Virginia.
Okay.
Because Grandpa, I was sure, wasn't expecting it. I was taken next door in this broken down house next door when decent people lived there.
No.
And that's Stuart sitting in the chair, and that's your dad on the right side. William and Florence. It's underneath. Let me see, that's Junior. Can't see it.
Junior, Stu.
Me, William.
They were where?
The Low End Eye Club.
New Year's Eve to you.
Do I have? She was young, because that hat was my hat that I had when I was working in Washington, D.C., and I was 18 then, and Mother was just 17 years older than I. And when I came home, I gave her that hat. Let me see it. And I came home in I used to spend the night with her. Daddy, beside Mother. can take it. I got her.
So what do you know about your grandfather now?
I know that he was born in Twyman's Mills, Virginia, Madison County, Virginia. He came to Pittsburgh when he was about 17 years old. He worked as a laborer, and he worked as a printer until he retired. I know he was a prominent Baptist layman
Printer where?
for the William G. Johnson printing company on the north side, and he retired from there. When he retired, his picture was either in the Post-Gazette. At that time, we had a Sun Tally and a Post-Gazette in the press, and I don't know which picture the write-up was in. And, you know, I was young and I didn't keep it, and I haven't been able to find out when he retired.
Did you ever know him?
Did I ever know him? Sure, I knew Grandpa.
What kind of guy was he?
At that time, nice. He's someone you stood in awe of. That's why, you know, you were just like he was a great man. Never heard any scandal about him. And when he was married to Mrs. Fox, Reverend Fox's widow, family used to go down Grandpa's house at Christmas time. I mean, all Daddy's brothers and sisters, and we'd all take our presents at Grandpa's house and put them under the tree. Then my grandmother, Ellen, used to get it on the floor, and then she would pass out the presents to everybody. We'd have dinner at Grandpa's house on Christmas then. And she died when she was 45.
And this is your
And then-
grandmother?
She was my grandmother.
What do you know about her?
I just know that she was a quiet woman that didn't mix. She stayed at home, and that's all I know about her. She just was a housewife, and there was nothing. You know, she didn't do anything I know of.
You belong to?
Caron Street Baptist Church. But I haven't researched her, her part of the family.
George W. Strothers and Cecilia Bell.
All I know is that he was a farmer in Virginia, and he drove a hack in Virginia, and he had money because he had property. And then when his two sons started out, he gave them both a nest egg to get them started. And Fielding and William both were laborers in the beginning, and then George taught Fielding how to barber, because George was a barber also, knew how to barber. And he taught Fielding and his son-in-law, George Thompson, to barber. And then William worked as a printer, and then he bought a drugstore, and Uncle Clarence worked in the drugstore, but Grandpa owned the business, and Grandpa had a few pieces of property, 3 or 4 pieces of property, too. But Uncle Fielding had a lot of property in the city, because he used to buy property at sheriff's sale, and then he used to lend money from mortgages.
George and Cecilia both lived here also.
I don't know about Cecilia because I haven't traced her yet, but George lived here. So I don't know if she was dead by when he came here or not, because I was only tracing, the Strothers. Everybody's, maybe my cousins could tell, Charles and that Robert I showed you, they may have known whether she was here since they knew my great-grandfather.
Has anyone ever mentioned anything about Fielding, the original Fielding Strothers and Margaret Coons?
No, because no one mentioned them until I asked Cousin Australia, that's Margaret's mother, told me about them, because she was Grandpa's first cousin, and they grew up together, because nobody else.
Margaret's mother.
Margaret Rowe, my cousin, our cousin, the one that's in Monroeville, her mother, Australia, was the one that gave me the information on the Strothers.
Next up on my journey, Twinin's Mill, Madison County, where I got a chance to go back into the past of the Strother. Actually, the family's name is Strother, S-T-R-O-T-H-E-R without the S. And you're looking at the Madison County area. Let's take a look at Madison County and how nice it is. And next, Twinin's Mill.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white. The bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Trip took me up to Richmond, where I found out even more.
We've been in Brandon last week and found us in there. We've not met with especially good PR.
Why not?
Well, we had an unfortunate and unsuspecting closing last year in August. We weren't able to reopen until November. So consequently, people coming from California, as an example, didn't know we were closed and naturally were upset. So
But you're open now.
we're open now, for whatever that might mean.
How successful is it? Like today I couldn't find what I was looking for. How successful is it normally?
Well, it all depends on what you're looking for. Some people spend 20 years and don't find everything. It's just, it varies with the wind, really. Depending on what you're looking for and how available it is, did it survive, and so forth.
And what is your name?
Bill Lang is my name.
Thanks for helping me out today.
Sure, glad to help you. If we can do so again, let us know.
Each of the county's many records are held in these file cabinets, as you can see. Each of the county's tax records, real estate records, marriage, deaths, births, you name it, they're in these file cabinets, where you can grab a microfiche and walk right around to the many reader machines they have and go through each of the files of hundreds of years. There are about 16, 17 different machines, as you can see. Plenty of space to work with. It's the Virginia National Archives State Library, located in Richmond, Virginia. They also have maps and the breakdowns of all of the many counties, a genealogical reference collection. They have all of the data that is available. There you have the breakdown of all the counties from the Virginia State Archives. So you guard all this stuff.
Why are you doing that?
You're the one that guards all this stuff, huh?
No. No, don't do that.
But you're gonna make me sign out now.
Yes, I am. Would you please sign off, sir?
Now, much of the information that I was able to find up dated after the Civil War times. There wasn't much information before the Civil War. what can you tell me about your grandfather?
William Leonard Strothers. My grandfather was a very proud man. I remember the respect that he commanded from his children, and he got it. I know of the respect that he received through the neighborhood and the community in which he lived. He was very involved in the church. It's Caron Street Baptist Church. I knew that my grandfather was a leader in the National Baptist Sunday School. He was a secretary of the National Baptist Sunday School. My father was very proud of his father. I can recall going to my grandfather's drugstore numerous occasions as a young child, young baby, and always being given candy, the opportunity to go behind the case to get candy. I would sit in that drugstore. My grandfather always had me come over and sit in the booth with him. And my Uncle Clarence would make milkshakes for he and I. And those were the good things I remember about my grandfather. I really don't remember anything bad about my grandfather. I know that on Sundays after church we would always go to his house, or my father would visit with his father, and there would be good times. But the most noteworthy thing I can say about my grandfather was his life, his church life. He was very much involved in the church life, which is where a lot of my exposure came from, through my grandfather, my parents, and the kind of life that we lived. His drugstore was located in the old East Liberty section of Pittsburgh on Frankstown Avenue. It was known for the type of service that was given there, the old kind of pharmacy where you could go in and get some home remedy type of medicines. It wasn't all modern medicine. Some things were mixed in the back room of that drugstore. It was a neighborhood drugstore that you no longer can find today. They're gone. They've disappeared.
Do you know anything about the name change which occurred from Strother to Strothers?
I don't know anything about that at all. My name for the last half a century has been Strothers. I really don't know of any name change. My father's name, Stuart, went under Stuart Strothers, and that's the name that I was given, and that's all I know. I don't know anything about Strother or anything else.
What about your Uncle Fielding Strothers?
Uncle Fielding? Yeah, that was my father's uncle. I knew my great uncle, I guess, but I didn't have that kind of relationship with Uncle Fielding. As the youngest member of Stuart's family, I didn't know too much about Uncle Fielding, other than the occasional visits I made to his house, where we talked about various subjects, but I didn't know too much about him.
Now, what about your father, Stuart Strothers? What can you tell me about your father?
My father and I were very close. My father, I worked in my father was a barber, and I worked in a barber shop as all of us had to do. We had that responsibility. My father taught me how to shine shoes and be a shoe shiner in the shop, how to clean up. But we traveled a lot. I can remember going to a lot of sporting events with my dad. In Garfield, we went to football games as soon as the season started. I saw softball games with my dad. We were very close. I used to have to give my father massages in the barber shop. Of course, he was the barber who had no hair, and he always had remedies of how to grow hair. So I would be the person that would do that. I would give him facials, give him shampoos, rub all kind of concoctions on his head to grow hair. Of course, none of them worked, but he thought there was hope for his regaining his hair, which he lost at an early age. But we were very close. I think I gave my father a lot of grief. He had to constantly use his whips on me, his cat o' nine tails. But still, we turned out to be very close. That's all I can say about my dad.
What are your memories of your brothers and sister?
My brothers and sisters, we had very good memories. We were very close. We were like brothers and sisters are supposed to be. My brother Stuart was my protectorate most of my young life. He watched over me. No one could do anything to me because if Stuart was in the area, there would be a problem. He would attack them. William was a little older, and of course I didn't have the chance to grow up with William too much. I remember William during his time in World War II, though. However, we wrote a lot. He used to tell me, "I like to hear from you," because I would write him pages and pages of what was happening around the house and around the city. As things, when William returned from the service, we got close. We were very close. I used to go to where he lived when he got married. I used to be with he and Betty a lot, spend a lot of time with them, as well as with Stuart. Florence, I think Florence and I have a closer relationship than brother and sister. There's something deeper involved in Florence and I, which is on a personal nature. I won't talk about it. But she knows how I feel towards her, and I'm sure I know how she feels towards me. But there's three of us left. Of course, we miss William very much. All three of us, Florence, Stuart, and myself, we miss William very much, and we can't ever forget the memories that we shared with him. But I know that God has taken care of him.
Now, there are other Strothers listed who would be your father's brothers and sisters, and I'll just name some of them: William, Marie, Clarence, Carrie, Earl, and Julia. Do you have any memories or knowledge of those Strothers?
Yeah, I knew my Uncle Clarence. I used to stay with my Uncle Clarence. I used to go to Youngstown, Ohio with him and visit his in-laws in Youngstown. Uncle Clarence was the pharmacist in my grandfather's pharmacy, drugstore. And Uncle Clarence, in fact, lived with us on Beery Street. Aunt Fanny and Uncle Clarence lived on the second floor of our home there. Aunt Julia was a remarkable lady. That was one of my father's sisters. Aunt Julia and Aunt Marie was the youngest of my father's sisters. They were very close. Aunt Marie and my dad, and I used to visit Aunt Marie. Aunt Carrie was a musician. She played the piano. I knew Aunt Carrie before she passed. But in traveling with my dad always visited his family, and that's where I had contact with my aunts, Carrie, Julia, and Uncle Clarence. I don't remember any of the other aunts that I had. I don't remember them. I think they probably had passed before I was born. I just knew Uncle Clarence, Aunt Julia, and Aunt Carrie. Those are the three that I knew.
Now, much of my information came from different sources. One of the things I did find out is the family strong tie with Corone Baptist Church, and I wanted to go back and find out some information about Corone, so I asked my cousin, Jeffrey, to come out and tell me a few things about Corone. And in an interview, exclusive interview, this is what he had to say about the connection of the Strothers family, Deacon William Strothers, and the Strothers family yesterday, today, and perhaps even tomorrow. This is what he had to say about the Strothers family in Corone.
Jeffrey Alston, I would be the oldest grandson of Stuart Strothers, Mary Graves. The connection with Caron Baptist Church would be Stuart was one of 5 children of Deacon William Strothers. Let's see, Deacon Strothers was one of the earliest members of the Caron Street Baptist Church, as it was known during his era. Prior to that, it was affiliated with Rodman Street Baptist Church, and before that, located on the north side on Green Street, was the Green Street Baptist Church. Initially, the church broke away from the First Baptist Church of Pittsburgh, predominantly white church. To jump back to the present, in the early 50s, Caron, note the change in spelling from what it was at Caron Street. There's an additional E. This was done at the request of Reverend Phillips to make things sound right, sound proper. Prior to Reverend Phillips, the church had a rather strong deacon board. Deacon Strothers, great-grandfather, was probably the preeminent churchman of Pittsburgh. In Harrisburg, there was at one time a proposal to name a building, a room, or something of that sort in his honor. As far as the church goes, he served as the longest tenured Sunday school superintendent, one of the senior members of the deacon board, numerous other offices. The church moved from Caron Street to this location. The church originally had land at Lincoln and Frankstown Avenues, upon which the new church was to be built. However, at the request of Reverend Phillips, this church was purchased, I believe in 1957, despite the objections of numerous members, including most of the Strothers family, on the location. Let me think. Strothers Sr. Was asked to become a deacon. He declined and instead accepted a trusteeship. He remained a trustee until his, there went Jeffrey, until his death. Since that time, Strothers Population Church has declined tremendously. Stuart Strothers II had been quite active with the church. However, there were some differences of opinion. Brother Strothers left and became a deacon at Cornerstone Baptist Church on Lincoln Avenue. From there, he moved south, where he is now at the University of South Carolina, Coastal Carolina campus. Let's see, Brother Gerald Strothers, my uncle, also left at approximately the same time and has attended several other churches. He's moved his membership, but there is hope that he will return to Caron. His family went to, or is still attending, Mount Ararat Church on Paulson Avenue. There is a connection between Mount Ararat and that Fielding Strothers was a member of Mount Ararat, as is his wife, Carrie. She is up in age now, but she's still a member in good standing. Florence Strothers, that would be my mother. She's the oldest of the four children. She is still here at Caron and attends regularly, with a degree of regularity, as do I, unfortunately. But overall, Strothers' presence with Caron has been constant for the entire existence of Caron as Caron. End.
at the place where it all started off, Corone Street Baptist Church, well, things have changed a bit. Well, it's now a garage, missing the steeple up top, as you can see. But it's still the same structure, just serving a different need. With us right now is Aunt Patsy. Aunt Patsy, what do you remember about your sister and your brother-in-law?
Well, one thing I remember about my sister and my brother-in-law was she got married when she was 16 and he was 22. And after they married, they married at my Aunt Letty's house. And they had a small wedding, family wedding. And then she didn't go on a honeymoon. They got a house and lived at 133 Stoner, both of them. They had 2 rooms, and in the kitchen, it was a big kitchen, that kitchen. They had a long couch. Whenever I went down there, I would go and stay. Well, my brother-in-law, he wanted me to stay with him for good, but as steward. But one thing about it, I was in school, and he didn't want to pull me out of school. So about after a year or 2 after they were married.
A year?
Huh?
After they married.
A year after they married, well, they wanted us to come live with them. They moved to...
That was you and Grandma. Huh? You and Grandma went to live with them.
No, we went to Joseph Street after that.
I said you and Grandma. You said they wanted us, but I said the us was you and Grandma.
Yeah, that's right. That's grandmother and his mother-in-law and I. So every day, he was just like a father to me. So every day I was going to Peabody High. Instead of me coming home with girls, he'd be up there parked waiting for me to take me home because he didn't want me to be hanging around with some other. And my girlfriend, my best girlfriend, Irene Hall, she was a beautician when she died, but she was a very good friend of mine. Well, Irene Hall and I used to walk up to Highland Pen, and who we see but my brother-in-law waiting for us. Then he'd take us home. He'd be sure that we got home right. Excuse me, because Irene lived on the other end of Deary Street on Larimer Avenue, right across the bridge, and that was my best friend. Well, I'll tell you when, were you going to ask the question?
No, you're doing fine.
Oh, my Lord. He took me like I was his daughter. Whatever Florence got, I got. And Florence was 11 years younger than I. But whenever I wanted anything, he would buy it. So I wanted some roller skates. He bought the roller skates for me. I skated on them once and fell. So he saved them skates. They saved the skates until Florence got old enough to wear them. But anything I would ask for, if I wanted a dress for Easter or whatnot, he would see that I got it. He was good to me. I mean, he was like a father, because my father died when I was a baby. So I didn't know anybody but him as a father. He was good to me and my mother. He provided for us, and everywhere, when they would go to the games, they used to go to the basketball games. I took care of the little Stewart. That was Stewart L. And he was a Rip Terrier. He always had told his daddy he was sick. But he wasn't sick, he was pushing me. And so every time his daddy and mother would go out to the ball games, he would start screaming. So I told him if he screamed one more time, I was going to throw him out the window. So then his daddy didn't like it because I spoke rude to him. So I said, well, you take him with you then. But he left him with me just the same. But as I say, he was just like a father to me. I never knew any other father but him. And even my brother when they first got married on Stober Street. Before, I don't know whether, my brother wasn't married then, and he wanted my brother to stay, so my brother stayed there. It was a year from him, and he slept in this long couch. He made provisions for me and also for anybody in the family. Well, when I graduated from high school, he was so proud of me, and he bought me rings and everything I was supposed to have, you know. And then, as I say, we had our graduation at Soldiers Memorial Hall, and he was tickled to death. And I graduated when I was 16. And of course, I wasn't used to being away from them, because everywhere they went, I went. Anything else I missed?
What about all the boys you say about Stu?
Stu?
My father, Gerald, and
I'll tell you as they come.
William.
Stuart, and Gerald.
Now, what were they?
William, Stuart, and Gerald. They was his sons. And you want to know their names? William's name was William Leonard Strothers. Gerald's name, Stuart's name was Stuart Washington Strothers, wasn't that right? And
Washington after his godmother. He started out as Leonard, and his godmother asked if they'd change his name to Washington, which was her family name.
That was his godmother. And your daddy, they named him Orlando Strothers, Gerald Orlando Strothers. And
he was named after Gerald Fox and Dr. Holland, Dr. Bailey O. Holland, our dentist.
And now we're down to the other voice we're hearing.
Huh?
Here, to your left.
What?
He wants to tell anything you recollect about me.
Well, I forgot about you.
Tell the good things.
I'm only going to tell the good things because we palled along together. And when she got older, she would, her and I would go out together. I was supposed to be her chaperone, but we both had a good time. And then when I was working, I had little part-time jobs. She'd take my clothes and wear them to school and then come.
I did that once. She had a fake fur coat when they first came out, and I sneaked it out and wore it to school, and I got hit with snowballs in it, and I was hiding it in the vestibule so she wouldn't see it so I could sneak it back in the house. I only did that once.
Well, that's what we'd do. And then I would always, I was sort of spoiled. And my brother-in-law used to say, oh, let her alone, she's sick. Because at that particular time, I also had a bad heart.
She was faking.
But she said I was
She was faking.
But I wasn't.
She was sick when it was time to do the work, time to do the dishes and things, she was sick. But when the dishes were done, she'd get dressed and go out.
We worked good together, she and I.
Now, one last.
Oh, let me tell you something else about her. When, I went across Larimer Avenue Bridge, and I had her in a buggy. So I was so jealous of her, I said I just ought to dump her over the bridge. So I didn't. And then we met a man, I don't know where this photographer's from, and he said, you want me to take your picture? And I said, oh, yes, take her a picture. So he took a picture, and then he brought him past my sister, and she said, oh, my goodness. Florence had a pretty white dress on, but chocolate was all the way hanging down there. She said, why would you do that? And she kind of got mad because I took a picture of Florence in the buggy. Well, after that, I was so proud of her. So, because the man said, well, we can get the picture that stayed off the cover, off the dress. So they bought the pictures, and Florence has one of them now. And after that...
The baby picture you saw in the book.
And after
that... I think I had ice cream all over the front of me, but the photographer blanked it out.
He blanked that out. Because he told your mother, he said, I can blank it out. But anyway, after I decided that I had to be with her, and she was my sister, I treated her like a sister, and then I couldn't get used to it because, you see, if I say I wanted something, they would get it. They did me like they did little Stuart. He was a baby that come ahead of time, So they sort of pampered him, and they pampered me also, both of them.
Now, when you say little Stuart, you mean?
I mean
Stuart, her brother.
He was born prematurely, so he got a lot of attention.
Well, he's going to be the last person I'm going to talk to. As a matter of fact, we'll be talking to him next, so
You going down here?
we're going to talk to him on the phone.
Oh, good.
So, how would you, can you give me just a little bit more on him? You say he was a pampered?
Yeah, but after he grew up to be about 12, he started, changing over.
Well, he really didn't get any more attention than the other ones got. But he didn't want Mother to leave his sight, so if she'd go out, he would holler and scream, go to the windows and scream when he was supposed to stay back here. So I used to give him a good shake when they'd go.
He get plenty of shakes. Well, then whenever I got married and I moved on Susquehanna Street, he cried. He wanted to go with me. I said, now what am I going to do with that boy? He's so mean. But I told him, I said, well, wait, we'll do it. Every weekend you come and visit me. Then that helped. He was satisfied. But he just thought he should be with me all the time.
And when he was little, he was just like part of Mother. When she'd walk, he'd be hanging on to her leg. When she'd be walking, he'd be hanging on, sucking his fingers. And when she'd take a step, there he was. Gerald was independent. He went his own way. He just wasn't close to anybody. He did his own thing all the time. He didn't care whether you were there or not. It's just different.
Well, and now you've seen part one of our tape presentation, and it took me from this living room to East Liberty to McKees Rocks. I went to Twyman's Mill, Virginia, Madison County, Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, Richmond, Virginia, just to name a few of the places that I traveled in making this tape. And I'd like to thank a few of the people in this tape and clarify a few things. Number one, the family started in Virginia with the name Strother. The S on my name was added after the family got up here to the Pittsburgh area. The number two thing would be that there are some missing details that I could not find at the archives, mainly because the period of the Civil War is missing from those who may be of black origin. The stories that have been passed down show the Strother family, as they say in Virginia, to have all kinds of different dealings, including a President Andrew Jackson, who was a grandkid of the first of the Strother. Now, there is no tie-in with that family that could be found in my part one search, but perhaps with some help from the family, we'll go and do a sequel to this tape, which is much needed, and it would cover more of the details and more of the real estate transactions. The family in my research to this day still had some problems with property dealings. It all started back in Virginia with the Virginia Strother family, and as they moved up to Pittsburgh, they brought those same tactics dealing with property and let no split the family. Property dealings caused a split at one point, and that's where you come up with the S on the end of the name, and some people without the S. I would like to, in summing up, I'd like to thank everybody, my Aunt Florence Strothers and Nelson Strother, who I met with out in McKees Rocks. We got a chance to go out to Neaton Park, and he gave me a lot of details and places to go in Virginia. I'd like to thank Jeffrey Alston, my cousin, who helped me out with the church part of this, and these are just the people involved in the family so far in keeping the spirit, keeping the name alive. Those are the people who have done it, and they deserve a big round of applause and pats on the back and things of that nature, because without them there wouldn't be this tape. Now hopefully people who will see this tape will get involved in researching and find out the past of the Strother family and finding out more about your heritage. For the Strothers Family Tape Part 1, I'm Jerry Strothers. Thank you.
You know it's so nice when you have a family reunion. Because, boy, as soon as you hit the house, the smells come out that kitchen and knock you down. Because you know you're going to get some of that good old home-cooked fried chicken and that potato salad you love so well, you know, and that good lemonade. Boy, let me tell you about it. It's so nice to see all the folks you love together, sitting and talking about all the things that's been going down. It's been a long, long time since we had a chance to get it together. Nobody knows the next time we'll see each other. It may be years from now. A family reunion. A family reunion. A family reunion. It's so nice to come together.
Come together.
Get it together.
Get it together.
I wish Grandma could see the whole family. You know I sure miss her face, her warm, tender embrace. And if Grandpa was here, I know he'd be smiling from ear to ear to see what he has done. All the offsprings from his daughters and sons, a family